Within the last few years, Atlanta police have established a massive network of cameras and license plate readers that it's now using to track crime in real time. 11Alive investigative reporter Zach Merchant reveals how the technology is changing policing and the questions it raises.
In Atlanta, if you are outside in a public place, there's a good chance something like this is watching you. In recent years, surveillance technology like cameras and license plate readers grew exponentially. Atlanta Police Department officers monitor it all from inside the department's video integration center, sharing the intel with officers on the street.
When she walked out, did they have any video footage? We have any video cameras?
The amount of information at their fingertips continues to grow. According to the Atlanta Police Foundation, more than 20,000 cameras are part of APD's network. The use of private cameras has helped drive that growth. In 2021, 4 locations had registered cameras with the Connect Atlanta program, according to an APD spokesman. By June of this year, there were more than 3,400. The department's network includes those private cameras, city-owned surveillance tech, and feeds from companies like Flock.
Most police departments are dealing with the challenge of hiring good people to help solve the problem. So what do you do there? Well, technology is a really good opportunity to help, kind of bridge that gap.
Josh Thomas, Flock's chief communications officer, pointed to success stories and high-profile incidents as signs of the technology's impact. In 2023, law enforcement confirmed the company's technology helped officers track down a suspect in a mass shooting at Northside Medical Midtown after a license plate reader flagged the car he was driving as it crossed into Cobb County. But University of Georgia law professor Thomas Kadri says robust surveillance technology also raises privacy questions.
How much of our public life do we want recorded and surveilled in that way?
Flock's spokesman said it is a question they wrestle with.
Now, there are going to be some other people who hear this and hear thousands of license plate readers, hundreds of video surveillance cameras just in the city of Atlanta, just from Flock. And they may think, boy, that is a lot of technology watching me move throughout my day-to-day life. And they might be worried about it.
Sure.
What do you say to somebody like that?
I hear you, and I agree. I think it's the right thing to be concerned and to wonder what technology is out there, who has access to it, and what can they do with it.
Thomas said Flock cameras are only in public places, and he said the company routinely deletes data off of its encrypted servers in an effort to strike that balance between surveillance and privacy. The Atlanta Police Department, at least on camera, didn't say anything about its policies. We repeatedly invited them to an interview for this story. They said no. According to APD's policy manual, its cameras are located in public places too, and it typically destroys its data after some time has passed. In recent years, the department has also pointed to cases where it says surveillance tech helped resolve serious situations. Like here in 2022, when APD says its officers were able to quickly locate a murder suspect after a license plate reader flagged his car.
Bring your hands back. Bring them back.
Of course, it can be very useful in having that kind of surveillance if you're trying to detect criminal activity, maybe prove criminal activity, but the privacy stakes are only going up and up.
It is a powerful technology raising big questions about privacy and policing, and it's all playing out under the increasingly watchful gaze of Atlanta's growing camera network.
The genie is out of the bottle. These cameras are everywhere and they expect to have more, but that privacy conversation is so key.
It is a balance, it is a tension, and that's what we try to explore in this kind of reporting, because as you just saw, just from what we just watched, there are a lot of examples. Law enforcement will often point to those examples that indicate this kind of information, this kind of intel really helps officers quickly address situations. But you heard from the UGA law professor there, Professor Kadri, there are privacy questions that get raised. Some people might say they're concerns to them. Other people might say this is a trade-off that they're willing to make for the probably enhanced safety. It is a balancing act.
No doubt. And they're inviting more people to be involved, right? If someone has a Ring doorbell, for instance, they can be part of this.
Those kinds of home surveillance programs, businesses too. The law enforcement in recent years, and APD in recent years has said, and they've really worked to recruit local businesses. If you see a gas station or a bodega, any kind of shop that you see that surveillance camera outside of, there is a chance that that is either connected in real time to the Atlanta Police Department's network, or they're registered, and so APD knows that there's a camera there and they can go and get that footage, which, as you can imagine, if you're a detective, if you're an investigator, how helpful would that be, right?
Yeah.
But if you're walking around in the city, there may be times where you're in public, but you're not overly keen on being seen frequently too, and it's not just public cameras, you know, or I should say public entity cameras. These cameras, everyone has said, are all in public places, but there are private businesses like Flock Safety that we heard from there that are also playing a pretty integral role in this whole process. And we asked Joshua Thomas, he's the Chief Communications Officer. You heard from him a little bit in that piece, but we talked more about how they wrestle with this tension of surveillance and privacy. This is what he had to say.
If you have a lot of data points of my car moving throughout surveilled intersections, surveilled stretches of road throughout the city in any given day, day after day after day after day, you may get a pretty good sense of my pattern of life.
But no one's making that pattern happen, one. Two, the information is permanently deleted on a regular basis, so there is no massive database of this. And three, we actually don't know where you went in between that. This is the thing I think people often have a misconception about. Most of the time, even if you have hundreds of cameras, thousands of cameras, you're still picking up 1, 2, maybe 10% of the roadways in the city. And so if you're missing out on 90% of it, you're never going to get the full picture. And in fact, we're not trying to get the full picture. We're trying to give enough evidence to law enforcement to solve crime, and that's it.
Interesting.
You know, and one of the points he made as well, and this is something you and I have talked about at this desk many times, law enforcement has gone through a period where it is increasingly difficult to bring new officers, new sheriff's deputies into their agencies. APD obviously is a big city, big agency, bigger budget, so they can recruit maybe a little more effectively than other agencies, but even they have struggled at times. Josh Thomas pointed out, he said, this is a force multiplier. If you're dealing with shortages, this is a way to get more manpower, so to speak.
Well, you had some good examples in the story about specific cases where it was a notification on a Flock camera or a piece of video that led to a fast response. So where you don't have the same number of officers, if there's more intel coming in, you can essentially do more with less, but you have to have the right information coming in.
Well, and think about the Midtown shooter,
Right.
an awful incident in our city's really recent past. Law enforcement at the time, and we heard about it again, credited in no small part the license plate reader technology from Flock to quickly flag that suspect vehicle moving out of moving into Cobb County when
In
they
real
crossed over
time.
the and it was a long manhunt after that. It was a scary moment, and that undeniably helped law enforcement bring that situation to a resolution quicker than they otherwise would have. So there are benefits here for sure.
And it can cross jurisdictions easily. The technology is now being able to be shared. In that case, it was between Atlanta and Cobb County, and you see that more and more, maybe shrinking the geography of the work that needs to happen.
And probably helping you liaise between agencies too, which historically has been sometimes a pain point, and not jurisdiction specific, but you hear situations all the time when you get lots of different law enforcement agencies all involved. They're not always talking to each other as effectively as possible right off the jump. If you're getting this sort of zoomed out intel, it certainly can help get that done. But there is the privacy element to wrestle with too. You approach a story like this, I always wonder, you know, if my grandparents or my great-grandparents were faced with these sorts of balancing tests, if they would be as comfortable with this kind of government observation of their daily lives as folks maybe, you know, right now are, who are much more familiar with, you know, I mean, look, we got a cell phone right here, right? This is with me all the time.
Yeah, and it's up to us to turn off tracking, and you wonder
cameras everywhere,
what's
right?
watching you, and you know, when you see something online and suddenly the ad pops up, and you're like, okay, you know, there's eyes on me. How much of it, according to the people you talk to, is then the onus on the individual to say, hey, I need to go out in public, assuming that there are cameras on me? Is it just a matter of we need to embrace this new reality, or is there something the average person can do to change that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can opt out of walking outside in Atlanta, and you shouldn't. We have a beautiful city. They're great places to go. I mean, we were on the Beltline for part of that. We were outside of Piedmont Park.
Somebody was probably watching you on a camera
They
somewhere.
surely were, and there were lots of people enjoying it. And you know, I'm sure a lot of people see those cameras and think, oh, this is good because there's maybe a little enhanced safety and observation
observation of me out in public. The way the law contemplates privacy and whether a warrant is needed for law enforcement to observe where you are, to get information about you, is an evolving conversation in the law. And courts historically move a little slower than the pace of technological evolution by design. You don't want hasty court decisions.
Sure.
To be very clear, there has been no court decision that has said any of this kind of surveillance is unlawful. It's by the book right now. But courts are increasingly grappling with, okay, we're in a different technological space than we were 5, 10, certainly 20, 30 years ago. And you're starting to see these new cases trickle out that start to challenge, okay, has something fundamentally changed? Professor Kadri addressed that a little bit in our conversation. This is what he had to say about it.
Even when you're out in public, the Constitution can still provide you with some privacy protections. Principally, this is governed through the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, which protects people against unreasonable searches and seizures. And so it's important maybe to step back and understand how a constitutional right against unreasonable searches could provide you with this kind of privacy right. And it really goes back to some Supreme Court decisions from a different era that we're talking about when a person has a reasonable expectation of privacy. And even when they're out in public, or even when something is within public view, courts have held that there could be a reasonable expectation of privacy that could give rise to a constitutional limit in terms of what the government can collect about you. But it is more limited when you're out in public or when it's in public view. And this is an area that courts are still struggling with now, in part because of technological developments and in part because of shifting norms about what sorts of privacy we might expect, maybe in part because of those advancements in technology.
So the phrase there is the reasonable expectation of privacy, and to your point, that's changed from maybe a grandparents' era to what we would think is reasonable now with the technology available.
The evolving norms, right? Real attorneys will do a much better job of this, but I want to walk you through 3 cases that stood out to me when I was in law school. They were in the back of my mind and really kind of floating towards the front of my mind through the reporting process in this story, because they get at this idea of an evolving sense of norms and technology and the law intersecting sometimes. These are all Fourth Amendment search and seizure cases. In 1989, there was a case called Riley, Supreme Court, close ruling, 5-4. They found that there was no warrant required for law enforcement to observe a residential home. Law enforcement was trying to see into a greenhouse in the backyard, private property.
Okay.
But the greenhouse had a couple of the panels on the roof missing.
They could look through.
Officer couldn't see it from the ground. They got in a helicopter, went up 400 feet in the air. With the naked eye, so no enhancements, they could see in, they gathered enough probable cause to get a warrant, search the home. Was closely contested, and the Supreme Court ended up saying, yeah, you can admit this evidence even though there wasn't a warrant, because it was, you were in public space, anybody can fly a helicopter, there are a lot of reasons for it.
Now you just shoot up a drone.
You can put up a drone, right?
It's getting easier even to do that.
And you're seeing that evolve. Law enforcement was kind of embracing this drone technology too. You speed forward about 10 years in 2001, the court in this case called Kylo, same 5-4 breakdown, but a different ruling. There, the Supreme Court said law enforcement would need a warrant to use a thermal imaging camera to see heat signatures coming out of your house. They're on public property. They're using this technology to see from public property, but because the heat signature was coming from inside a home, the court closely divided, said you do need a warrant there.
Sure.
Technology is enhancing your view. And then just a few years ago in 2018, the Supreme Court again in a 5-4 case that was narrow, it was confusing, there were lots of dissents, so still a topic area that needs to evolve. The court said that what's known as CSLI, it's cell site location information, the stuff that helps tell where you are on your phone.
Sure.
It said you need a warrant to get that kind of information about me, about my travels, about where I am going. But the court, even its opinion, said this is the kind of tech that we just haven't grappled with before.
Sure. I'm thinking as a parent, Live 360, a lot of parents of teenagers loving that app, but if you are on an app like that, it literally tracks everything you're doing, even how fast you're driving. I mean, the details, pretty amazing. And all of the, by the way, you're a real lawyer.
Well.
You've got the degree. So the cases that you were talking about, it stood out to me that it was all by one vote. I mean, these are closely contested, even with the greatest legal minds. around
Yeah,
this.
and I think it's important too to remember what a mom might want in terms of surveillance of their loved ones
All of the above.
may be different from what you might want law enforcement,
No
want the
doubt.
government to be able to access about you without a warrant.
No
and
doubt.
again, this is, you put your finger right on it here. These are all close cases.
Yeah.
They're challenging cases. And the Supreme Court's job is to ultimately be the resolver of challenging legal issues that the lower courts are divided upon. As the tech keeps getting more ubiquitous, more advanced, and more robust, there are going to be more of these questions of, okay, how much is too far? Is there such a thing as too far? When does law enforcement need to get that warrant? Is there an expectation of privacy when you're in public in some cases? These are all questions that are still very much being hashed out with this overlay of, we're in a technical age that just in the last 10 years, how much technological advancement have we seen?
Yeah.
Exponential, right?
Things that would seem sort of out of the realm seem so possible now. You think there might be a time where a camera can detect a face and be able to tell you who that is and where they live.
Think of 20 years ago if I told you were going to have this in your pocket.
Exactly.
And all this could do. And on top of all this, law enforcement will always say, and we've seen lots of examples of this, it can help. It can help a lot.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about, you talked about how it helps in the investigative sense. It's also pretty concrete evidence when it gets into a court of law. How much conversation is there about the fact that it's just a flat out deterrent? Because as the general population is more and more aware of all of the cameras around, do police feel it is first and foremost a deterrent that someone may not do something because they think they might be being watched?
I think of those cameras sometimes you see next to the camera there'll be a little sign that says, smile, you're on camera, when you go to a gas station. We didn't have a lot of conversations about the deterrent factor on this, but what I do know in many conversations with law enforcement, with prosecutors, they say that juries increasingly want to see, and they would argue expect to see, the kinds of CSI evidence, you might call it, video, body camera, recordings. Prosecutors have told me that whereas 10, 20 years ago you put an officer on the stand, they testify, and a jury would often accept that testimony. Now they're finding that jurors want to see the technical stuff. They want to see this kind of first-person view, and so of course the surveillance cameras going to be a huge benefit there. And what they can do too, it's not just crimes in progress, it's not just criminal investigations. I want to turn our attention to a little bit of video that the Atlanta Police Department released a couple years ago from an incident that was not criminal, but it was a serious situation for the family and the woman involved.
Yeah, I'll go look up and I'll go down all the stairs and everything and see if I can find it.
When she walked out, did they have any video footage? You have any video cameras?
I'm checking the cameras. The niece that she last saw her at 12:12. That's when she left the building.
Okay.
So I've been trying to run the camera. Hey, I'm gonna give you this picture.
All y'all looking for?
Yeah.
She recently been out here?
Yeah. You could send it to your guys.
Got you.
I'd appreciate it. Okay, there she is.
Okay. Yeah, this is you right here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we've been looking for you.
You have?
Yes.
What's going on?
11 radio.
11.
Can you help me out with that missing 56? I'm going to be at Astor and Lee Street by the Lakewood train station.
So you see that right there. What a profound example of the ways that this tech can help. You know, that family was unbelievably grateful.
So happy that the cameras were happening and the departments could cross over and talk to each other like they did in real time.
You talk about this balancing act, right? I mean, that undeniable good, right?
Sure.
You've got to balance this tech, though, privacy advocates would say, with the expectation, with the hope that some of your actions, maybe even in public, can still be private. It's a question that is still unresolved, and we're going to be watching it as it continues to do this balancing act for as long as we keep getting new technological development. So I think
till the end of time.
Till the end of time.
If you have a tip you want Zach or our team to investigate, be sure to give us a call, 404-873-9111, or email us at investigates@11alive.com.